We're back, and I wanted to thank those of you that have watched a couple of the streams this weekend. International politics, really, with Britain as well as with Israel. Going to talk a little bit about domestic stuff though now. So, what does it really mean to be an independent, and why do I think that Bernie Sanders has pretty much trampled that definition so far this year? Being an independent means making choices that sometimes, they rankle even your own supporters. Um, Tulsi Gabbard, I think she's not technically an independent because she is a member of the Democrats, but she's bucking the trend. A lot of people in the Democratic Party want somebody who will be all out, just a cheerleader and stuff like that. She doesn't agree to do that. She says, I'm going to resign from the DNC because I don't think that they're really approaching the primary process fairly. She says things that are generally very, they're skeptical of the CIA, skeptical of the intelligence community, skeptical of intervention. Now, do I agree with her in every single instance? I don't think so, but I'd say that, her judgment appears to be, usually pretty close to the truth. Okay, so, Tulsi Gabbard, I would say, has, she's earned really the designation of an independent, really a maverick, and much more of a maverick than that fraud John McCain was. And then you have Rand Paul. Rand Paul, like I said, sometimes they make decisions that you don't necessarily agree with. Today, he apparently has declared that he'll vote for the resolution that condemns the big border wall emergency declaration. Now, Trump could probably still veto it. I think that he still has enough votes in the Senate to prevent a veto override. Okay, but yeah, I think Rand Paul is standing up for principle at a time when really what the hell do you care at this point? Okay, the Constitution is being trampled on by the Democrats. It's being trampled on by a lot of the Republicans who all the time they've kept authorizing these use of military forces, the AUMFs overseas and stuff. So I can understand why Rand Paul is taking this position. I would say this is the wrong time to do it, but it does piss you off. Okay, so what does this have to do with Bernie Sanders? Today, Sanders did an event at Chicago's Navy Pier, and there was a pretty good crowd there, and they seem, rather enthusiastic, as someone would be at, an event for Bernie Sanders if you were a supporter. And it was I think the setting was perfect, but the execution was just strange. It sounded like Kamala Harris was talking. It sounded like one of these token Democrats who all they care about is the identity politics. He went into this long thing about homophobia, Islamophobia, misogyny, yada yada, whatever. That's not what the independent Bernie Sanders stood against. Now, I'm not saying that he stood he stood for those values. I'm not saying that he was a homophobe, Islamophobe, etc. I'm saying that really Bernie Sanders, when he caught fire back in 2015 through 2016, yes, there were some identity politics areas where he was pretty salient, such as the Black Lives Matter issue and things like that. If you're a progressive, I'm not a progressive, by the way, just so I don't pull the wool over your eyes, but Bernie Sanders was leading at the time with a lot of economic messages. He was leading with breaking up the big banks, overturning Citizens United, Medicare for all. He was leading with things like, withdrawing from the TPP, which is now accomplished, so you don't even need him for it. He was talking about a number of very important areas where no Democrat and most Republicans didn't really touch. And on many issues there was nobody that touched like Bernie Sanders. He was this guy who was going to talk about a Green New Deal within the Democratic Party. At the time, it wasn't what we think of it now, because it hadn't been formulated yet. Okay, so we're kind of working forward, and now we've gotten to this area, this new ground where yes, there is a Green New Deal to stand for or to oppose, depending on where you stand, and Bernie Sanders is standing with it. But standing with the Green New Deal is now not necessarily as intrepid and bold of a stand as it used to be, okay? Because there are a number of other people that are advancing it and have gotten on board with it. Now that would make him a trailblazer, if you want to look at it that way. But he didn't focus on that at the beginning today, and it seemed very obvious and weird to me that he was just leading with this stuff about the identity politics and how the White House is filled with hate and all this stuff about ethics and the Mueller investigation. He seemed to, which by the way, I actually, you know what, today I'd have to go back and look if he actually mentioned the Mueller investigation. So please, don't hold me to it, but he was alluding to the fact that the White House was, compromised in some way. Now, and in the past, he's also made similar accusations, such as the Helsinki summit. In the aftermath of that, he was saying, well, Trump, it appears he's really gone all in with Putin or whatever. This by now, if Bernie Sanders can't renounce that thinking by now, what the hell is it worth supporting him at all? We now know that even Michael Cohen, the supposed star witness of the Trump saga, the scandals or whatever, can't furnish a single shred of proof that there was any Russia collusion whatsoever. Okay, now that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means you can't prove it. Okay, Bernie, or anybody else, if you can't prove something, then shut up. Or else people are going to, if the Mueller report comes out, and as is, expected by most people, it's not going to have anything tangible. It will just be a lot of innuendo and suppositions and speculation and indictments of things that have very little to do with Russia. Well, Trump is going to take all the clips of all these people, and that would include Sanders, and put them into videos and say, look, these people lied for a couple of years. They could have told the truth, and they could have criticized him truthfully. And people should criticize Donald Trump truthfully, because he's the president. He shouldn't be unaccountable. But that's not what they did. They lashed on to a blatant lie. They tried to drag the U.S. into a Cold War with Russia, which unfortunately it looks like they might have succeeded at. Okay, and don't get me wrong, I think Russia is involved in certain areas of the world where I don't think that they're doing the best. They're not working in the best interests of the people living there. Okay, the Venezuela situation, I think Russia is having a detrimental effect. I don't think the U.S. is having a beneficial effect. But I'd say that we need less involvement of these countries, this geopolitics, this brinksmanship between the U.S. and Russia. And even when I'm critical of the U.S., I think that it's bad for these people to encourage more intervention from the rest of the world. Now, in Bernie's case, he's basically accepting that U.S. intervention in some of these areas is a good thing. No, Bernie, it's not. We need a world where the U.S. and Russia are able to cooperate on a number of topics and then agree to disengage on other ones. We don't need any sort of conflict with countries that, what are we supposed to gain from it? We have an energy competition with them. That's okay. We can compete with them. And with China, we have a number of very strong disagreements on trade policy and on security and copyright. But we can't keep doing this thing where we suddenly decide that this country is just unacceptable. They're ruining the humanity. They're dumping on the entire world. because there's ample evidence around the world that people think the same thing about the U.S. as well. Now, the best solution to lessen anti-American sentiment is to do good things with other countries and reduce the number of conflicts we have with them. And that's the reason that Tulsi Gabbard, in my opinion, would be a good option if you're a Democrat, a good option if you're going to vote in the primaries. I don't really think I'm going to vote in the primaries here in Ohio. It's possible, by the way, that Tulsi Gabbard will drop out by then anyway, and I'm not a Democrat. So, yeah, I think it's going to be kind of a depressing race if you're a Democrat. If Sanders remains in the race and Tulsi Gabbard has to drop out, you're going to be stuck with really this outdated, compromised, catcher's mitt-faced idiot. And that's really the Bernie Sanders that I think is left for you. So no, he's not independent anymore. He's not a real trailblazer. He's kind of he's accepted himself as this sort of puppet of the system. And if you watch the Navy Pier speech, I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's about it. I don't want this to be too long. Please like, share, subscribe, and subscribe to me on BitChute and all the other social media that's in the comments. That would be on BitChute, CocoScope, Gab, and Minds. I'll talk to you guys later.